The ceiling inside the pyramid was low, and Bane had to duck as he went in. Using a glow rod for illumination, he found himself inside a small antechamber with passages leading off in 3 different directions. Choosing the one on the left, he began his explorations. Room by room, he searched the pyramid, finding nothing of value. Several of the chambers showed evidence that another had already been there, and Bane recalled the tales of excerpt, a dark Jedi from a time long forgotten, who was also rumored to have located Nadd's final resting place. According to the legends, Kun had emerged with power beyond his wildest imagining. Yet as Bane continued his fruitless explorations, doubt began to creep into his mind. Was it possible that this crypt, like the ones he'd searched on Korriban, was nothing but an empty, worthless tomb? With mounting frustration, he continued to search, winding his way through the passages until he reached an apparently insignificant chamber, almost buried at the very heart of the temple. Both Khan and Cordis were there waiting for him. They stood a meter apart, each on one side of a small doorway carved in the back wall. The door was only a meter high, and was blocked by a tightly fitted slab of black stone, giving Bane hope once more. The stone seemed to have been undisturbed by whoever had been here before him. It was possible no one had found this room, hidden at the end of the twisting maze of passages. Or maybe someone had found it, but had been unable to move the stone slab. It was even possible that the small entrance had once been hidden by the lost arts of Sith sorcery, and the spell obscuring it had gradually faded over the centuries, making it visible only now. Glancing quickly at the twin manifestations on either side of the small doorway, Bane crouched down to examine the slab. Its surface was smooth, and it extended only a few centimeters out from the passage, making it impossible to get a firm grip. Of course, there was one other way to move it. Summoning his strength, Bane reached out with the force and tried to pull the stone toward him. It barely moved. The stone was heavy, but it was more than sheer mass that held it in place. There was something fighting his power, resisting him. Bane took a deep breath and tilted his head from side to side, loudly cracking his neck as he gathered himself for another attempt. This time, he went deep, plunging into the well of power that dwelled within his core. He reached back into his past, dredging up memories buried deep in his subconscious. Memories of his father, Hurst. Memories of the beatings. Memories of the hatred he bore for the man who'd raised him. As he did so, he felt his power building. It started as it always did, with a single spark of heat. The spark quickly became a flame, and the flame an inferno. Bane's body trembled with the strain as he fought to contain the power, letting the dark side energy build to a critical mass. He forced himself to endure the unbearable heat as long as he could, then thrust his fist forward, channeling everything inside him toward the stone, blocking him from his destiny. The heavy slab flew across the room and struck the far wall with a heavy thud. A long vertical crack appeared in the wall, though the dark stone block itself was undamaged. Bane dropped to his knees, panting from the exertion. He looked up to see the ghostly watchers still keeping their vigil beside the entrance. With a shake of his head, he crawled to the now open doorway and peered in. The room beyond was dark, so Bane pulled one of the glow rods from his belt and tossed it through the opening. It landed on the floor, illuminating the room. From what he could see, it was a circular, high-ceilinged chamber about 5 meters in diameter. A stone pedestal stood in the very center. Atop it was a small crystal pyramid, Bane instantly recognized as a Sith holocron. The ancient masters of the dark side had used holocrons to store all their wisdom, knowledge, and secrets. A holocron could contain ancient rituals of devastating power or the keys to unlocking the magics of ancient Sith sorcerers, or even avatars that simulated the personality of the holocron's original creator. The information inside was so valuable that for many centuries holocrons had been the single most valuable tool in passing on the legacy of the great Sith Lords to future generations. Unfortunately, the art of making Sith holocrons had been lost several millennia past. And over the years, the Jedi had scoured the galaxy to find all the known Sith holocrons, then hidden them away at their library on Coruscant so no one could delve into their forbidden knowledge. To actually find a holocron like this, one that might contain the teachings of Freedon Nadd himself, was good fortune beyond anything Bane had even imagined. Crouching down, he squeezed his massive shoulders through the tight doorway. Not surprisingly, Khan and Cortis were already waiting for him inside. Bane glanced over at them, then up at the 5-meter-high ceiling. By the light of the glow rod, he could make out movement, as if a carpet of living creatures was crawling across the surface above his head. He stood motionless, his ears picking up wet, slurping sounds. As his eyes became accustomed to the dim light, he was able to make out a colony of strange crustaceans clinging to the roof. They were almost flat and somewhat oval in shape, a circular shell that tapered to a point near either end. They varied in size, from slightly smaller than a fist to as broad across as a large dinner plate, and their coloring ranged from bronze to a reddish gold. The slurping came as they dragged themselves along the ceiling, crawling over one another and leaving glistening trails of slime in their wake. As he studied them, one of the creatures fell away from the others and dropped down toward him. Bane swatted it aside disdainfully with one hand, sending its hard shell bouncing and skittering across the cavern floor. A second later, another broke free and tumbled down. Bane ignited his lightsaber and slashed at it. The blow batted the creature away, sending it flipping end over end into a far corner of the room. Bane stared in amazement. The lightsaber should have sliced the creature clean through, but his weapon hadn't even left a scratch on its hard gleaming shell. Suddenly realizing he was in grave danger, Bane made a lunge for the holocron. As his hand closed around it, the colony of crustaceans broke free en masse and cascaded down on him in a chitinous swarm. With one hand clutching the holocron, he swiped at them with his lightsaber and deflected others with the power of the Force. But there were too many to keep them all at bay. It was like trying to ward off raindrops in a storm. One struck him on the shoulder and latched on, instantly burning through his armor and clothing with an acidic secretion before fastening itself to his skin. Bane felt 1,000 tiny teeth burrowing into the thick meat of his back, followed by the searing pain of the acid secretion melting his flesh. He screamed and slammed his back up against the wall, hoping to jar the creature loose, but it held fast. As he struggled to dislodge it, a second struck him square in the chest. He screamed again as the burning acid and tiny teeth dug through clothes, skin, and even his thick pectoral muscles to fasten directly to his breastbone. Bane staggered under the onslaught of pain, but managed to strike out with the Force. The rest of the creatures were sent hurtling away from him like leaves swept up by a fierce wind. They clacked and clattered as they struck the walls of the room. The brief reprieve gave Bane a chance to drop to his knees and scamper through the cramped opening and back into the small room from which he'd originally entered. Ignoring the agony of the two creatures still attached to him, he reached out with the Force and hoisted the stone block on the far side of the room up into the air. His powers were enhanced by both pain and a desperate urgency, and the block moved easily for him this time, flying across the chamber to plug the entrance before any more of the strange crustaceans could scuttle out after him. For a second, he just lay there panting, clutching the holocron and trying to ignore the pain coming from the two parasitic organisms feeding on his body. He could hear the rest of the colony on the other side of the wall, the wet gurgles of their grasping mouths mingling with the sharp clacking of their hard shells as they crawled up the walls back to their roosts on the ceiling. He imagined he heard another sound as well, the harsh, mocking laughter of Cortis and Khan echoing off the walls of Freedon Nadd's tomb.